Well, first off, I want to welcome everybody on behalf of Daniela, Chris, and myself to our first ever Adobe Commerce Champion office hours. We are very excited to speak about this subject here, and it's something that Chris and myself are very passionate about. And soon we'll jump into ACCS versus ACO, but for now, we'll just go over some housekeeping. You can go to that next one, please.
Yes. Sorry.
No, you're good. Cool. So to ensure we are abiding by the Adobe Commerce Code of Conduct, we're informing all attendees of the Champion Office Hours that this meeting will be recorded and posted to the Adobe user group and YouTube channels. If you do not want to be recorded, this would be your time to go ahead and hop off and exit right now. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or add them into the chat here. We'll be monitoring the chat. And then at the very end here, please take our survey before you leave. Next slide, please. And then just some house rules. To ensure our office hours stays user-focused and safe space for members to learn, network, and problem solve, we ask that all attendees follow these rules. No self-promoting or pitching of any kind is permitted at the Champion office hours or in our user groups. Don't contact people outside of this meeting without their consent. If members share their use cases here at this meeting, please don't share that information outside of this call here. And this is just our loose agenda today. It's going to be an open conversation, so we're excited to get you guys' opinions and thoughts and how you, what you guys may be experienced with ACCS or ACCO. We just went over our kind of like our housekeeping rules, and we'll soon jump into our topics here, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A eventually. But before we get there, Chris and I, again, very passionate about this this topic here, so we have prepared a couple decks and slideware for us to look at. And you can go ahead and get the next one. And then please join us on our skill exchange. We have our QR code up here. Take a quick picture of that, get registered. A lot of good stuff happening there. It's Adobe Champion led, and you can learn a lot of stuff here. And then again, you know, we're going to have some sessions at Summit and in person and virtually. So good stuff. I would definitely implore all you guys to check this out. And I'm sure you guys have heard, Adobe Summit is live and it's ready. We're ready to get there. You know, April's coming very fast for us here, but April 19th to the 22nd up in Las Vegas. If you haven't registered, please do so. If you guys are clients with Adobe, please reach out to your AEs or account reps and they can probably help you with that registration. And then I do believe, I'm not positive about this, so don't quote me on it, but I think there is a group discount as well if there's 3 or more. So if you guys are heading to the event and there's 3 of you guys, you may be able to get a little better pricing. And then also during, we're going to be announcing our finalists here. So the innovators shaping the future of customer experience, 34 countries, multiple industries, and 1 stage. So be sure to join us there. And if you guys want more information here, you can click that link down there. I believe this is going to be shared out, the deck. I'm not too sure, but I believe it will be. And upon doing so, you can click that button. And then let's talk AI. We have a community group for AI where you can learn more about how AI is being used in the real world, how the workflows are being used, ask questions, share your ideas. It's really like a lunch and learn type of situation. And again, our QR code's right there, and then you can just click that link when you get when you receive that deck here. And then joining our office hours chapters. This is new for me, but please come and join. Again, this is our first ever that we're kicking off here for 2026 Adobe Champions, and we're excited to have you guys here. And so if you guys like the dialogue and the content we're bringing, we implore you to come and join us and have more conversations around this. And then now we're getting into the good stuff, the meat of this this conversation here. My name is Ray Ochoa, and I am the Director of Adobe Commerce at Proficient. I'll be leading this conversation well with my co-host here, Chris, which I'll hand it over to him for him to go ahead and introduce himself. But before I do that, I want you guys to take a note of our next office hours. The next one will be March 3rd, and I believe that's in our EMEA chapter. And then the April 10th one, I believe, is happening in the India area region. So check that out when you guys get a chance. But over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Chris. I've working with Veltec for 7 years now. I'm the Senior Vice President of Technology there. I've been working in the Adobe Commerce space for around 13 years or so now. So pretty excited to be talking to you all about the updates from Adobe, ACCS, ACO, very exciting products. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. And the goal of this is to offer a wide range of capabilities, flexibility to pass to solve complex business challenges. I'll summarize this because I don't want to read it word for word here, but essentially we want to bring a community together here for us to be able to ask those tough questions, or maybe you're exploring the product and you just want some more input of how we're doing it or how other people are doing it, our peers are doing it in this space here. Again, majority of the people on this call are either already playing with ACCS, ACO, or have strong experience in Adobe Commerce of some nature. But we're here just to have an open, casual conversation and talk about what's going on in the world of Adobe Commerce. And we just want you guys to be able to reach out to us. And then again, Chris and myself, we're Adobe Commerce champions here, and so we like to think we know a lot about the product, but you can never know enough. And then today's topic. So today we're going to focus specifically on ACO and Adobe Commerce Cloud as a Service, ACCS, when to use one over the other for solutions. And as we kind of walk through this, feel free to come off the mic or turn on your camera and interact with us and ask any questions. But we've prepared, Chris and I put together a little deck for you guys, just kind of keep it flowing, then also for some visuals and you guys to have a better understanding of what these two products do and how they work and measure up against each other. If we can jump to the next one, cool. So without further ado, we're into the good stuff here. So what is ACO and ACCS? Adobe Commerce Optimizer. It's a front end platform. It modernizes your experience layer altogether. It has a merchandising layer. It has Adobe Commerce Storefront, which is headed by EDS technology. It's extremely fast. It's really good, in my opinion, for opportunities or projects that you don't want to get rid of your backend just yet. So it's kind of like a good headless approach to modernizing your stack. And then on the Adobe Commerce SaaS side of ACCS, that's like your full stack, your full platform that you'd get on the SaaS experience. Not to be confused with their past with Adobe Commerce Cloud. So Adobe Commerce Cloud is still what I'm considering more of a legacy type of version at this point, but they're utilizing the PHP, and you can still do extensibility and whatnot into the platform and into the core. That is no longer capable on ACCS or even in ACCO. You'd have to bring that stuff that's in process, out of process, and migrate that into App Builder or any other type of flavor that you'd like to use to kind of do that orchestration and manage those dependencies. I don't know if you want to add any more color or flavor to that, Chris.
No, I think, yeah, you're spot on. I think the key differentiator here is that ACCS is that full stack, right? It is everything you need to launch a commerce environment. It is a front end, it is content management, it is your back end, your catalog, your cart, your transactional elements. ACO doesn't come with the commerce platform, right? And when Ray says back end, that could be SAP, it could be Salesforce, it could be Shopify, right? It's you bring your own commerce platform to the table and power that with the experience layer and merchandising layer that ACO are going to give you there. And I think that's the really interesting thing about these two products. There's some overlap around the experience layer, but the back end is very different across these two.
Cool. And if you can go to the next one there. So we did our best to try to articulate the differences, right? And like the main thing is you see on step one, step two, ACO is on the left-hand side on that swim lane there, and that's what you get with that product. You basically get everything you get in ACCS. The big differentiator is that Commerce Foundation. ACCS has that back end, what Chris was referring to here, where it does it all, right? If you go to ACCO, you can either, if you're on PaaS right now, or even on-prem with Adobe Commerce, you can continue to leverage that as your back end, and then you expose those GraphQL endpoints to the front end to ACC or ACO, and then it can consume that, and then you have a really robust front end, and it's a little easier to configure like AEP and the other Adobe products and technologies. In ACCS, the main thing you're getting there is that Commerce Foundation. So it's kind of choose your adventure, pick your path, and what's comfortable for you guys and how soon you want to get there, right? I would say for ACCS, I call them more of a term called greenfield in our space here, right? If it's a greenfield implementation, that makes it a little easier to kick off with ACCS because you don't have anything in the back end. But typically in the enterprise world, we have all kinds of stuff that's been working for a while and a lot of different integration points, and to go and lift and shift Big Bang Theory doesn't really work out. And so what I've been doing a lot, and I've been suggesting a lot to our clients and our prospects, is we use like the staggered approach if you're sitting on a different back end, or maybe you really love, FFCC and how those components work, or Shopify or Hybris or SAP, whatever you're using back there. And so you could continue to use all that customization, all that great work you've done in the back end, but you can replace it with the modernized front end, and that's where ACO comes in. And really, you can take advantage of a lot of stuff. And then even with the catalog that's offered on both these platforms here, it's the merchandising interface is a lot more GUI nowadays. You can log in, you can create different channel policies. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to manage that. But there is a little bit of upskilling that's required just to kind of understand how this is structured and set up nowadays. But I'm really enjoying the Adobe Commerce Storefront as well. So that comes with both of these. It's basically a headless front end that you can plug in, and then it comes with drop-ins. So there's now B2B functionality right out of the box. It literally takes you it took me 20, 30 minutes to stand it up. And then after that, you start to wire it in, and so then you can just make those calls to Adobe Commerce and start plugging in your catalog. Then it also makes the content management perspective really, really easy. And again, it's backed by AEM, and it's sitting on the EDS delivery service. So EDS is also a technology that you'll hear us refer to, but Edge Delivery has notes throughout the role and essentially serves it up really, really fast. It's I like to call it it's like a CDN, but I know I'll get my hands slapped here because it's not really a CDN in the way the technology breaks down. But for loose paraphrasing, that's kind of how I tend to explain it, and it's extremely fast. And again, with ACS, you're typically seeing Lighthouse scores of typically like in 98, 100, but as low as 90 sometimes. And that really just comes down to how you're building your content and where you're plugging in those processes and things like that. I'll go hand it over to Chris because I'm sure you got some stuff to throw in here as well.
Yeah, no, just reiterate and sort of dive in around the storefront. The feedback we've had from merchants where we've gone and implemented Edge Delivery and the new commerce drop-ins, a new way of building out those storefronts has been extremely positive. They're very enthusiastic about the different content authoring options. So there's a couple of options there. There's document-based authoring, or there's universal editor, and both come with some advantages depending on how you want to be set up. It looks really weird the first time you take on document-based authoring. You're like, why am I building my website in SharePoint in a Word document? But clients have actually really enjoyed the simplicity of it and the flexibility they get. You can easily just copy and paste from file to file and publish directly within the browser there. So they're accelerated around their content velocity. So the way they can push out pages, the way they can push out updates, they're very, very enthusiastic about that. And overall, the performance and speed, like Ray said, getting the 90s, getting those hundreds around our Lighthouse scores. They're some of the fastest commerce sites that you're going to see out there. We're seeing really good performance and how that relates to things like conversion rate, average order value, and organic traffic, right? So there's key advantages to implementing this storefront technology.
Yeah, and I want to highlight what you said about the document authoring. It's a really great tool, and again, for like the marketers out there that are on this call or people that are listening to this in the future here, it's really nice because you can use it really easily, right? Like if you know how to move around in your Word doc, or you know how to move around in Google Docs, essentially you can do a lot of that content building right there, and then it pushes it into the front end and does all the translation for us. So it's really taken like that reliance on that coder to be able to do this. And so again, to Chris's point, the velocity to get CMS stuff up there and content up there, it's much faster and a lot less headaches. So really, really cool.
Yeah, and we found clients are able to onboard and train team members faster because they're not learning a new interface. They're not learning, I have to log into the commerce admin to go and manage my content anymore. I'm working in Word. I know how to work with Word. I can build a table. I can do updates, right? So they've seen empowerment for their teams and less reliance on us as an agency, which is beneficial for merchants, right? You don't have to come and, like Ray said, get someone to code if you need a change. You can go and do it yourself in that document-based interface. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you want to do like some bigger customizations, right? Like we use App Builder and API Mesh for the orchestration layer. So App Builder is where you'd be building your essentially your backend logic for the most part, or your applications, and then API Mesh is the orchestration tool that comes out of the box with Adobe Commerce Optimizer or ACCS. Then outside of that, I was just going to highlight again, just the ease of using this technology here, and then as we move into the future here, a lot of talk around agentic and how's my site going to be indexed? Does it have GEO, AEO? So this also puts you in a good opportunity and it gives you an advantage to actually be able to utilize those technologies a little faster, a little easier now. There's some other technologies that Adobe has released, like Brand Concierge and LLM Optimizer, which becomes easier to kind of plug and play with these things. And then if you're using other Adobe products, once you're on ACO or ACCS, in my personal experience, it makes that plug and play a lot easier to kind of integrate with these other systems and these other technologies that Adobe's offering out of the box there. And if we can go to the next one. Cool. And so what I want to highlight here is just mainly the key differences of what we're seeing. And it's pretty high level, so feel free to ask some questions around this. But, as Chris alluded towards earlier, the back end here, you can use what ACO. So the left column right here, I'm sorry, I didn't highlight that. The left column is ACO, the right column is ACCS. And with the back end systems, you're bringing your own back end. So whatever your back end is today, whatever your transactional flavor is, you would need that. ACO does not have transactional. It doesn't come with cart, things like that. It's a merchandising layer and a content management system on top of that. Adobe is a service, ACCS. That's the full stack. That comes with everything front end. Monolithic, how we used to think of, but sort of, right? Like you still have your back end, you have your front end, but it's going to be headless now. And the front end, we're using Adobe for Storefront for both of these. They have drop-ins already in there. And with AEM sites and things like that, managing that content is very familiar to those individuals and very similar to how we manage that. Complexity, this is kind of a vague statement here, and I know Chris is probably going to chuckle at this, but with complexity, I would say it's lower time to market to use ACO because you're not really having to go back in there and re-engineer a lot of what you have for your back-end foundation, but you do have to expose it into GraphQL and transform that that way we can consume it on the ACO layer. But again, you can use API mesh. What we're doing on like .NET projects and things like that, some of that antiquated legacy type of code, we're wrapping it basically in App Builder, and then App Builder is pushing it through API mesh, and then we're consuming that back up on the front end. And then on the ACCS, it's a bigger animal in general, and so moving into ACCS again is a full-on replatform, and so there's going to be higher risk there, and then it's just going to take a little longer to get to market there. The migration, again, very minimal for ACO because essentially we're decoupling the front end from the back end. And if you're already sitting on a decoupled front end and back end, then this makes it a lot smoother and easier. You've essentially replaced your front end, whether it's Next.js or whatever you're using on the front end view with ACS storefront. And then we adapt to the ACO foundation and framework. Migrating into Adobe Commerce Cloud as a service, it's a little bigger of a step. If you're on Adobe Commerce particularly, or any other platform, and you want to get to ACCS, I don't know what Chris's opinion is here, but we're doing like a staggered approach where it's like, let's get you up to ACO, and then once we get to ACO and you start to realize some of that value and you start to able to play with the platform a little bit and do some of that content management and really start to enjoy the experience layer, during that time in the background, we start to bring a lot of the stuff out of process, and we're doing audits and reevaluating what your stack looks like from the customization pieces, and we're slowly bringing that into App Builder. And then once everything's kind of been into App Builder, then we kind of push the big bang into ACCS, and then you're fully adopted into ACCS sitting on a fully managed cloud platform by Adobe. The timeline here, weeks to months. I know that's vague. Weeks could be, anywhere from a few weeks. Months could be, hey, it could be even 18 months, but I like to think it's going to be like, anywhere from 6 weeks to 12 months on ACO, and then to adapt all the way to ACCS, I would say that's more like an 18-month journey, typically, at least, maybe even 24 months. But again, you can get to ACO pretty quickly. I leave it very vague because it just really depends on what your stack looks like and how complex all your internals are and your programming and customizations are that you've made throughout the years of being on whatever system you're on. And then for the upgrades, really not like anything upgrading on the ACO. It's all managed by Adobe Commerce and or the Adobe team. And then same with ACCS. So cost of ownership does go down as you start to move into these two different products. And definitely if you're sitting on an on-prem solution right now, moving to a fully managed Adobe solution definitely will save you some dollars in the end there. But again, it's not an overnight type of thing, and it's not an overnight success. It takes time, and it takes time with you sitting with specific partners with Adobe that have done this and know what they're doing, and working with you through that. And then I'll pause for a moment here. I don't know if there's any questions. I know I kind of rattled through that pretty fast, but if anybody has questions or would like to know anything, please let us know. And I do see, Javier, you have a question about licensing. That one's a little out of my role here. I typically usually throw that over the fence to the Adobe personnel, but I don't know, Chris, if you have anything around that one.
Yeah, ACO comes with Universal Editor license. So ACO is going to give you Edge Delivery. It's going to give you Universal Editor. It'll give you AM assets. It'll give the merchandising APIs as well. So ACO is using the new composable catalog data model API set, which is slightly different to the PAS set of APIs for ingestion to things like live search and product recommendations. Very flexible, very customizable catalog model. You get to define metadata and how you want to structure that all yourself within ACO. So that's all included there. And ACCS, the catalog, technically, it's not powered by ACO, but it uses the same API set. Depending on when you licensed ACCS, it may come with the V1 of some of those catalog APIs. The newer licenses for ACCS are going to come with the composable catalog data model interfaces. So you can sync direct to CCDM, or you can sync to the Adobe Commerce backend, your catalog there.
Cool, thank you for that, Chris. But I think we're good to go to the next one here.
And to Manav's point, from the migration perspective, there is some AI accelerated tooling that is coming from Adobe. I think some of it's in early access. I think some might be available to help with converting legacy code, particularly in the PAS on-prem environment. So getting that PHP code across into App Builder code. There is some work that is being done on that to help accelerate those migrations. Yeah.
Yeah, and with you saying that too, with the PHP, I don't know if I highlighted this earlier, but PHP is no longer being used on the new platforms here. It's JavaScript and Node.js and more of those like newer technologies that we're gravitating towards here. And then here, Chris and I just put together some bullet points because I think this helps us kind of think through of like, when should I choose ACO or when should I choose ACCS? I'm not going to go like through the whole spiel here, but like from top to bottom, if you're happy with your current backend, that's a check for ACO. If you want a lower risk and you're going to remain on that backend, that's another check for ACO. If you're kind of suffering from like slow speed or sluggish speeds on the front end, ACS, which is Adobe Commerce Storefront, ACO, this is a great move for you, and it's pretty easy to adopt pretty quickly. And then also, if you're on multiple platforms and whatnot, but you still need to have all those integrations and whatnot, that orchestration living in your back end with your ERPs and whatnot, ACO again satisfies that. And then legacy system integrations. Again, if you're really married to whatever stack you're on right now and you're not ready to jump all the way into the deep end with ACCS, ACO is a good kind of intermediate step for you to test out the technology, start to get familiar with it, and eventually make your migration into ACCS. Or you could sit there as long as you want. You don't have to go to ACCS. We have some clients that we're working with right now that they don't have a future plan to go into ACCS. They just want that experience layer and they want that merchandising catalog and all that good stuff that's coming out. And so they're happy to just keep what they have right now, especially because it's 20 years of customizations and whatnot that they don't want to try to reconfigure or try to rebuild here.
I think from the migration side of it as well, like adoption strategies around ACO, there's a couple of different ways that you can think about that. When you have heavily invested in your current commerce platform and the back-end integrations, there's some elements that you may want to keep in there. So where ACO, where you're going to get the best bang for buck around ROI is going to be things like top of funnel and product discovery elements. So looking at homepage, content pages, product listing, product details, search pages, they're very easy to get up and running on ACO with. Where you might find more complexity or things around like the account dashboard and cart and checkout, like those kind of elements, but they can all remain on your existing stack, right? So if we look at something like Salesforce, we can use their session bridging technology there to hand off between the product discovery elements, push that across into the existing checkout experience within Salesforce, whether it's on the more modern approach or a legacy approach within Salesforce, that you can hand off to that, where you can maintain your payment integration, your shipping integration, taxes, like all those things will just work. You're just handing off a cart to the existing checkout experience. And the same goes in like a Shopify world, where you hand off to the Shopify checkout experience, which very, very performant checkout. So hand off from the catalog across to Shopify, keep using everything that you're running there. So easy to get up and running on ACO when you start to break down what you're actually migrating versus what you're keeping on your current backend.
Cool. And then if we can jump to the next one, we have a little bit of architecture here just for you to get a better understanding of how this works. But essentially on the left-hand side there, you got your third-party ingestion, your PIM, your ERP. You'd also have, your back-end systems there. And then on the front end, at the very top there is just Shopper's browser. That's where all like, the user interfacing with your experience there. That's where the PDP, PLPs live. And then also like some of our drop-in components, content blocks, product recommendations, some of that AI tooling that's out there, live search, things like that would be plugged in on that layer there. And then also if you want to, push over, once you get into the transactional type of thing, it pushes over to that third-party cart checkout, as Chris was alluding towards earlier, like Shopify or whoever that may be. And then you have your merchandising component here, which essentially is where all your products live, right? And it's a very great UI, I think, from where we came from. I've been on this platform particularly since 2009 or so. So I've seen the evolution and the clunkiness, and not trying to knock the old ways, but that's kind of what we had back in the day to work with. But nowadays it's much easier to write these policies. It did take me a little bit of time to kind of get up to speed of how to use the merchandising layer and how to use the catalog service. But once I did, it's kind of like I'll never look back again. And it's like this just makes it much easier to understand. And then you also have like your good toolings for your metrics. It has abilities to like capture all that good stuff. And then I think you heard Chris use the acronym CCDM. That's our composable catalog data model. And essentially that's what's housing the catalog and your product information.
Yeah, I think you can't downplay the value of CCDM there. I was going through recently with some of our internal SAP team around how the catalog is structured within a PCM environment and how that would potentially translate to something like CCDM in the ACO world. And they kept challenging, how would I do this, and how would I do this, and how would I do this? And to Ray's point, I just showed them in the interface, like, this is how you configure this is how you configure this. And they were pretty amazed that it was so easy to go and set up the policies, the rules, the price books, like everything is very configurable within the interface within ACO. Very, very, very easy to set up, different rules for, regions, for B2B price catalogs, or sub accounts for different companies. It's all configurable within the policies within the CCDM.
Yeah, within the CCDM too, I've been blown away because, again, like back in the day we had shared catalogs, right? And now all the price books are bought into this layer here, and it makes the management orchestration for me as a business user, for me as a developer, just much easier, because it really is like click a button, insert this field, or like type in like whatever that pricing book's going to be, and then it kind of starts to consume all that, and like it builds it really, really quickly, and you're able to build out your price books and catalogs really fast if you want to. Opposed to back in the day, like on the past system, how we had the shared catalogs. It's a similar idea, but it's not the same. And that was like really hard for me as a former enterprise architect, really on Adobe, to wrap my head around when this first came out, because I'm so used to working in that old school way and trying to adopt this new way. And I'm an old man nowadays in this world. So it's like, teaching an old dog new tricks was a little difficult, but now that I use this and I play with it, again, it's one of those things that I really see the benefit and the power of, and it's really easy because I'm able to show other people very quickly how to use it, and they can pick it up really within just a few minutes, few hours of playing with it. Where me explaining how shared catalogs and how this is going to work and how you do all this like different hierarchy and things like that was a little harder for people to wrap their heads around, I believe, back in the day. So again, it just became a lot more click-based and user-friendly, in my opinion. And then Danielle, if you could be so kind to get us to the next slide here. So ACCS. So again, we've been drilling on this, right? I think everybody knows that if you want to re-platform and you're willing to do the big bang type of thing, or you could even do it in a phased approach, but that's really where ACCS comes in. It's on the re-platforming. If you have high DevOps overhead, this is a good fit for you because you're no longer managing your upgrades and things like that. You hand it over to Adobe. Adobe handles all the security patching and everything. It happens on them. You don't have to invest that energy or those resources into managing that anymore. So that burden is essentially eliminated. Adobe integrations, I think that's an obvious one, but I want to list it out there. So if you're using other tools like AAM or CDP, or playing on the AEP experience platform in general, it just becomes a little easier to integrate with those, and they're making it more smoother nowadays. And as we're starting to adopt to more AI type of agentic type of stuff too, I think it's going to become a lot more easier to kind of integrate with these things. And then of course, Adobe Commerce, enterprise grade features. You're going to get that on both ACO and ACCS, but with ACCS, you're just getting the whole build here. You're getting everything that comes, with ACO plus the Commerce Foundation here. And then again, just cost of ownership in general, it starts to go down as you move into this structure here. And again, most of it is because of that DevOps burden that I pointed out before. And then for the future proofing of the platform, it's headless now. So even if you don't want to use Adobe Commerce Storefront, or maybe you are using AEM or something like that, you can still continue to use that. Essentially, where the real big benefit with ACCS, in my personal opinion, is the backend, right? You get your backend that you would need for transactions and transactional type of stuff like that. Plus, you get all the merchandise and everything like that. But you don't have to use Adobe Commerce Storefront as your head. And I think I forgot to mention that earlier. But definitely, we suggest it as Adobe people. Like that's the tooling I'm using, and that's the front end I like to use because it just has a lot of these built-in what we call drop-ins and things like that. So it's easier to kind of build out your store. But I like to think of Adobe Commerce Storefront as your new Luma. But again, headless, not really Luma, but that's in the Adobe speak, that's where the theme would be. And then I think we're good to hop to the next one if nobody has any questions here. And this is pretty small, so when you guys get the deck, we see the deck here, go ahead and feel free to zoom in here. But I just want to give you guys the full view of how the architecture looks like, and then how you'd be leveraging this and whatnot. And you can go ahead and pass through this one because I know it's kind of tough to read here. And then again, so I just wanted to put some bullet points of like when to choose ACO, when to choose ACCS. You want to keep your existing back end. You only need front end. You want to lower your risk and cost, and you want to deploy quickly. Definitely, it meets all the things for ACO. If you're thinking about, I need a whole new platform. I want to re-platform. I'm not happy with what I'm sitting on today. I want to inherit a lot of this new technology. I want to move into a more modernized stack. That's where ACCS comes in. It does take a full re-platform, has all the enterprise features that you would typically see out of Adobe Commerce. And then with your maintenance, that goes away opposed to what we're used to on-prem and PaaS. And then Adobe manages everything. So both tools are great. They're very, very similar. And I'll just keep on highlighting the differences, like that back end, right? Like if you like your back end, ACO is more of a better fit. If you're ready to move completely off your back end, ACCS is kind of where to go. And then I think we can go ahead and go to the next one here. So these are the kind of questions that I ask myself, but also ask our prospects and our clients when we're thinking about what should I choose? Should I go with ACO or should I go with ACCS, right? And like, how well does your backend work? Are there like any constraints there that you don't like? Like what would keep you on your backend really is the question there. How deep are your integrations is really a big question for me. I usually like to get my hands on like their integration reference architecture and then just high level architecture as well. Is performance an issue for you right now on your current stack? And if so, ACS, ACO makes a lot of sense there. What is your budget for this? And then also within budget, it's not always about dollars, but it's also what is your expected timeline to go to market with this thing? And then also how much risk are you willing to take for operational disruption while you're going into a re-platform? And then are you familiar with the product? I usually like to ask, like, would you like us to show you a demo, things like that, and you could definitely go and play with this stuff. Right now, you can download at da.live. You can go ahead and play with the storefront, but there's already a boilerplate out there. It's free for you to go and kind of install and play with, and so you'd instantly have, the documentation there's pretty good. You basically have, a front end up and running within an hour if you depend on your level of competency and comfort there. But you can definitely go and check that out, and that'd be the storefront for either one of these. And then how many platforms, like commerce platforms, do you have? Do you want, maybe you're a business that inherits companies pretty often and whatnot. ACO may make a little more sense in those situations because you want to have these different back end components, or maybe they're using 3 different ERPs and things like that. So ACO you can funnel that all up into ACO. You could do that with ACCS as well, but I feel like ACO is just a better fit from that. And then again, if your top priority is marketing and speed, ACO gets you there pretty quickly. With ACCS, I won't read through all this stuff, but it's essentially what we've been talking about here, right? Like, it's going to be like, are you ready for a full-blown replatform? Is your backend out antiquated or outdated? Do you right now have to pay for infrastructure management? Would you like to get rid of that? And then, what is your Adobe stack look like? If you're using multiple Adobe products, I usually tend to say, hey, let's get on ACO or ACCS just because it makes it a little easier for us. And then also the predictable total cost of ownership there. You know what you're getting yourself into. You know what the cost to manage your foundation there and your ECP. And then, are you ready for a complete transformation? Like, do you want to do this? And again, if you're already on an e-commerce platform, we're not just going big bang. I mean, I think Chris and I are aligned here. It's a phased approach to get to ACCS. You don't just like pick it up and jump on ACCS overnight. You need to decouple a lot of stuff and do some audits and determine what features and you need to port across and things like that. I'll pause. I know I've been talking a lot. And I'm going to grab a drink of water, but I'll let Chris take over for just a moment here.
No, I think, yeah, you pretty much covered everything. And I think what's important is that in either scenario, ACO or ACCS, you could be coming from Adobe Commerce, PaaS, or on-prem, or you could be coming from an external commerce engine, whether it's homegrown or another SaaS provider or something like that. ACO is a bridge potentially from PaaS to ACCS as well. So start incrementally adopting some of these new technologies, start decoupling your front end, start adopting ACO in your existing PaaS environment. And then, like Ray said, iteratively start to decouple and remove that PHP code, move it into app builder code, and sort of establish that path forward to ACCS. It's really interesting around the ACCS stuff in that some of the frustrations people have had around the legacy implementations is around the upgrades, quarterly upgrades all the time, right? It's costly. ACCS gets rid of that, right? So it's managed infrastructure, it's managed SaaS. You don't need to worry about upgrading the platform anymore. It's just kind of handled for you. So it gets you that, predictable TCO, like Ray said. So really interesting. I think both options have merit depending on where you're coming from.
Absolutely. And then Chris and I took some time to put together, if you can jump to the next one, Daniela. This is just kind of like the recommended path from our experience of how we kind of see how this goes, right? Like, step 1 is to get onto ACO, start to realize the benefits and the value of ACO. Sit there for a little bit and start to rip out your customization, start to port them over into Adobe App Builder, utilize an API mesh. And then eventually you make your migration fully onto ACCS, and you can reap all the benefits that from the backend foundations that Adobe Commerce Cloud as a Service comes with. But this is typically the migration I'm seeing in the path that we're suggesting to all of our clients currently today. I haven't really gone big bang yet. I don't know if anybody has, but again, I'm waiting for the opportunity to build a greenfield opportunity straight directly onto ACCS, but those just haven't presented themselves yet. So this is typically how our work is looking today, and it, from probably about like June of last year was where we started to come up with this idea of how to kind of move into it, and it's been pretty successful for us. No, Chris, if you have anything, I don't know if I'm missing like a step 4 and 5 there, but this is kind of like how I summed it up.
No, this is it. This is what we're recommending as well. So iteratively adopting this, start take advantage of ACO, that storefront, the performance benefits, speed, the conversion rate, organic traffic, all those really nice things we get with that, and then start to reduce the complexity and back end tech debt that you may have incurred over the last 5 years or however long you've been running that legacy platform, and then get up and running on ACCS, that SaaS environment. We're working through all iterations of this with different customers at the minute, each posing different challenges. So it's really interesting working through all the nuances of these migrations. We have some coming from on-prem, some coming from PaaS, and different levels of complexity there.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I mean, it's been a while since Adobe Commerce has released something just kind of like cutting edge, right? And so I was very, very excited when we started to learn about this last year at Summit, and then when it came GA here in June of last year, it was we got right behind it, And I know Chris and his team was right there with us, and so it's exciting to kind of see where the future's heading with this stuff. And again, I'll just lightly touch on AI, but I think with AI adoption as well, like we're going to start to see a lot more of this headless type of architecture. I know back in the day it was like composable architecture, and then we kind of moved into microarchitecture. And now we're going into whatever this new world is, right? And it's going to be really, in my opinion, driven a lot by AI as well. So this gives you that flexibility to kind of adapt very quickly and pivot to whatever this new technology and this new world's offering here. And if we can go to the next one. And then this, we've kind of like spoken about this a lot. This is just kind of like high level paraphrasing what this whole slide and deck was about. I'll let you guys kind of leisurely look at it on your own time. And then if we can go to the next one. And again, just kind of bullet pointing, summing up, how you should, what should drive your decision here. And that's pretty much it from Chris and I. This is everything we have for you guys, and I hope it was very fruitful for you guys. But we have some time left, and so I want to open it up and give everybody an opportunity to come off the mic or come on camera and have an opportunity to speak to Chris and I, ask questions, or even just ask questions amongst ourselves here. If anybody has anything. And if I guess you could go to the next slide, Daniela, if you're still there. And then I think the very last one is a thank you one, so we can kind of just leave it there.
I see Javier raised his hand, and also we have a question from Artem in the chat.
Cool.
Yeah, I had a question. I am trying to understand how the Adobe Commerce Storefront works. I know there is a drop-in SDK that helps you to customize it. One of our clients that we are working on preparing an ACO POC has a very specific use case that requires us to do a fully customized component that doesn't mimic anything that exists already in the storefront. My question is, when this SDK is going to be generally available, because it seems it's in early access. And the second question is, suppose that we have to build something really custom, what kind of limitations we have? I understand that this SDK uses React. I wonder if we should go with vanilla JavaScript or if we can use other tooling when building stuff in EDS.
Yeah, great questions. When you say custom component, specific to like PLP, PDP, a content component, or something else?
It's a kind of product listing, but it goes beyond to the regular product listing. And in our particular use case, we pull product data from an inventory that is not necessarily in Adobe Commerce. We have the catalog information coming from the catalog service of ACO, and we have a price book for base pricing, but we also need to call other APIs and basically merge together a single view on how everything should look for the client. In the original Adobe Commerce, we have a custom component. Basically, we couldn't reuse anything that existed already. And it seems to be the case, again, on this particular scenario. Not because ACO lacks of features, but because this particular custom use case that the client needs. So the question is, when we face that with a new client, what could be the approach when building such kind of customizations?
I think it's obviously going to be a little bit more nuanced than this, but I think if you're purely combining a couple of different data sources behind the scenes, you may want to move that from the storefront, from the client side, to App Builder. So building a custom API endpoint in App Builder to consolidate and build a unified view of what that looks like to the customer to feed that back to the storefront. Then you could potentially do a data mapping exercise if it's a custom model onto the existing components, right? If it's just price and inventory and things like that, you could use the existing components, but in App Builder, you change the source. You could do it in the mesh potentially, depending on how much manipulation has to happen there, because you can add different sources to the mesh. You can do transforms and rewrites and replaces and like some of those rules within the mesh logic. And then building out a custom API endpoint within App Builder to fetch from your different backend sources. That's one way. If you can do it from just like a data modeling perspective, if you need to build out a custom component, I think the goal with Storefront is to not introduce new technologies into it, right? So I wouldn't go and recommend introducing like React or any heavy like frameworks like that. The goal is to keep it light. So you could use Preact. You can build some custom components within Preact, and we've done that. You can use vanilla JavaScript. If you look at like the block library, for example, a lot of that is using vanilla JavaScript, and it depends on how complicated and how many like DOM refreshes and rewrites and manipulations and things you have to do within the storefront, but try and keep it as light and performant as possible. That's the primary goal of, EDS and the storefront. I don't know, Ray, if you had anything else.
Yeah, I'm spot on. So where my brain was going there was App Builder 100%, right? And then using API Mesh to do that orchestration and transform a lot of that, and then serve it back up to the front end. We got ourselves in trouble trying to shove React into Adobe Commerce Storefront, and we saw a degradation of performance very quickly. And so we had to kind of like go back to the whiteboard and like, figure out how we're going to do that. And so I think you're spot on there too. I think the purpose and the goal of ACS is to keep it very light, very performant. And when you start to really bring other technologies into it, I think you run a risk there, right? I'm not saying that it can't be done, because it theoretically has a lot of flexibility and you can do what you want. But what we've learned is what you're saying too, like in the directory, the scripts and the blocks and things like that, we go in there and we just write like vanilla JS to mediate that and to get us what we need. But yeah, I would definitely put a big warning sign on shoving like React into that, because that's what I thought too originally. And so I said, hey, well, let's just build it on React here, and it actually went backwards for us. We saw our score go way down, and so with that, we kind of just had to go back and just write some real true JS there, and our score ticked right back up. But yeah, and then for the heavy customizations on the other side, yeah, App Builders tends to be the way to go. I definitely think that's the best practices approach of how to do this. So hopefully we got you answer that some way in some way, and hopefully that's some good context for you, Javier. And then I see,
yeah,
Artem, you have a couple questions here. As far as how was the new stack adoption for the dev team in terms of more JS and CSS instead of PHP? I'll be honest, I'm a back-end guy. I've been in the back-end world for a really long time. I can read, write JS, but I'm not like a front-end programmer for the most part. I'm getting better with it nowadays because this is a newer technology that we're adopting to. But for my like full stack guys, or like the individuals that were writing more JS or on the front end, they were able to pick it up much faster. Our AEM teams, people that are working in AEM, they seem to just be able to like run circles on us in the beginning here. They really like understood how to utilize these drop-ins and things like that. So there was a little bit of like slow growth for us sped developers, just transparently speaking, But once you kind of get it and you get back into like comfortable writing JS again, it becomes really fluid and easy, and the structure it makes a lot of sense when you start moving around in there. For me, it took me, I don't know if like 6 weeks or if it was 3 weeks or whatever, but it took me a little bit of time to kind of just like digest it and get comfortable with it again. But but now I'm really comfortable with it, and so it wasn't that much of a burden once we got there. But yeah, definitely your full stack or your front end developers will probably pick this up a little faster than your back end developers. Especially for me, I lived in PHP code pretty much my whole career, and now we're moving away from it. So I can write some really fascinating stuff in PHP, but that's just not where we're going now. And using a lot more Node.js as well for like building like that, like the app builder kind of communication and in backend like systems and things like that, or what I would consider now backend systems. But I don't know if you have any more to add to that, Chris.
No, we had a similar experience. Yeah, I think taking a traditional Adobe Commerce PHP dev and teaching him Node is one thing. You can train them up. It takes a bit of effort to understand, moving out of the monolithic development style, right? Being able to like, I'm just going to write a plugin or whatever on an existing method. It's kind of easy sometimes to set that up. Understanding how to shift that across to like a webhook based integration, build in app builder takes a little bit. And then understanding sort of how app builder work was the main sort of learning point from the back end side. What is nice about using Edge and app builder based environment is that it opens up the talent pool of who you're using to work with this stuff, right? You don't have to come in with an Adobe Commerce background to be able to start working in this. You can come in as a front-end engineer, right? JavaScript, CSS, that's what you need to know to get up and running on Edge. And you just need to know how to build a node function to start working with app builder. So it's a set of APIs that you consume. If you're coming from like the composable world or something like that, it's very easy to jump across and start learning these technologies, which is really nice. It kind of standardizes things a little bit and opens up the amount of people that could be working on an ACO or an ACCS style project.
Yeah, it's no like to your point there with the talent pool, right? Like it's no more just isolated to us Adobe type of guys, right? That like just really like lived and breathed this. Like I really feel like a lot of more people can adapt to ACS really quickly because they're familiar with this technology, and it's just writing essentially JavaScript and then understanding Node.js. But I have seen too, I don't necessarily need an Adobe Commerce front end developer to develop on ACS at this point, right? As long as they're familiar and they're comfortable with the front end languages, they can pretty much jump in there and start producing something overnight in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then thank you for responding to that, Chris. I was about to say as well. So
yeah. We're not privy to release dates and timeline and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, that's something for the product team. Definitely something to follow up with them on. There is some stuff that's public. If you have a look at Experience League, I think there's some documentation that's probably out on there. That's going to be sort of your source for any of those upcoming and changes and updates and things like that.
Yeah, but I think that's a good opportunity for you guys. If you guys aren't joining us physically at Summit, tune in virtually, and you may learn some stuff of some new tools and technologies that are coming out, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of good stuff coming out of Summit. So if you're not going to join us there in Las Vegas, I highly recommend joining the virtual opportunity there because you can learn a lot and you can see what's kind of on the roadmap here and what's rolling out.
Yep, I think Artem had another question there around checkout. Do you want to take that one?
Let's see here. What's the reason we use cart and checkout third-party services instead of out of the box? Well, for that one, that's on ACO particularly. If you're using ACO, it doesn't come with those transactional type of components and things like that. So then, whatever your third-party, what we're calling third-party, but that would be your e-commerce platform. So if you're using SAP or using Shopify, that would be passed over to that platform at that time when they get to checkout. And it's basically a GraphQL call that hands over the session. If you're on ACCS, it does have cart and checkout, so we wouldn't go third party there. We would use Adobe Core Foundation right there to transact and move them all the way through the journey. Cool. Awesome. Well, I hope this was very fruitful for everybody. We were really excited to present this to us. Again, I said it before, but something that I'm very passionate about right now in the Adobe Commerce space is ACO, ACCS, and really excited to see what we're doing here in the future and what they're going to release here at Summit. Cool. If there's nothing else, I mean, we can hang out for 4 minutes or so, but thanks again. And I just want to say thank you to Chris. You're big support here, man, and always enjoy working together with you. And kind of old dogs in this game over here, but I love it, man. And Daniela, thank you so much for getting us together here, and all the other Adobe people on this call. Appreciate you guys for joining us, and big shout out to Chris out there too. We love you too, man.
Yeah, nice to see you there, Chris. And thank you, Ray, for organizing everything, setting it up. It's been great.
Sounds great.